Corper Adewale is a charming, well-spoken young man in his early 30s who has made a name for himself as a dedicated mathematics teacher at one of Lagos' top private schools. His good looks and natural charm have made him popular among students and faculty alike. Corper takes pride in his work, teaching with passion and dedication. However, despite his professional success, he harbors a secret flaw: his insatiable flirtatious nature. Corper's charismatic persona soon begins to catch the attention of his students, particularly three young women, Amoka, Simi, and Tola. Each of them is drawn to his charm, mistaking his friendly gestures for deeper affection. Despite knowing the boundaries that come with his role as a teacher, Corper finds it difficult to resist their attention. His poor judgment sets him on a dangerous path, blurring the lines between professionalism and personal desires. Seeking extra help with her math assignments. Simi, on the other hand, is shy and reserved, but she begins to open up to Corper, who appears to offer her the attention she craves. Tola, the most studious of the three, admires his intellect and finds herself drawn into long conversations about life and education. Each of the girls forms a different bond with him, but all three share a growing infatuation with their handsome teacher. Though Corper initially brushes off the attention, he starts to enjoy the admiration, and before long, he's indulging in flirtatious behavior that skirts the lines of propriety. He convinces himself that he's in control, but deep down, he knows he's playing with fire. Temptation grips him, and Corper's decisions become clouded by his desires, making it harder to separate his professional life from his personal weaknesses. Corper's control over his emotions and boundaries crumbles when he spends more time with Amoka after school hours. What started as innocent tutoring sessions turns into something more intimate. One evening, Amoka confesses her feelings for him, and despite the voice in his head screaming for him to stop, Corper gives into the moment. They share a kiss, and that one act sets a precedent for the future. Corper's relationship with Amoka becomes physical, and though he knows it's wrong, he convinces himself that it's a one-time mistake. However, it isn't long before similar situations unfold with both Simi and Tola. Each time, he tells himself he will stop, but the allure of the forbidden pulls him back in. Little does Corper know, the consequences of his actions are already beginning to take shape. A few weeks after their first encounter, Simi starts feeling unwell. At first, she dismisses it as stress from schoolwork, but when the symptoms persist, she becomes concerned. After confiding in a close friend, Simi takes a pregnancy test, and her worst fears are confirmed: she's pregnant. Terrified and confused, Simi doesn't know what to do or who to turn to. She considers talking to Corper but worries about how he will react. Meanwhile, Corper is oblivious to Simi's situation, continuing his inappropriate relationships with all three girls. He's aware of the growing tension, but he assumes it's just the natural consequences of juggling multiple relationships. His focus remains on maintaining his job and keeping the relationships hidden. The guilt is there, but he pushes it down, convincing himself he can handle the situation. Amoka also finds herself in a similar predicament. A few weeks after her first encounter with Corper, she realizes she, too, is pregnant. Unlike Simi, Amoka is more confrontational and decides to take the matter into her own hands. She visits Corper after school one day, visibly upset. As soon as they are alone, she reveals her pregnancy to him. Corper is stunned, caught completely off guard. He fumbles for words, unable to process the weight of the situation. Amoka is furious, demanding that he take responsibility. Corper promises to figure something out, but internally, he's panicking. His world is beginning to crumble, and he has no idea how to fix it. Little does he know, this is just the beginning of his downfall. Tola, the third girl entangled in Corper's web of deception, also discovers she is pregnant. Unlike Amoka, Tola doesn't confront Corper immediately. She spends days agonizing over what to do, unsure of how to approach him. She fears the repercussions, not only for herself but for Cooper, whom she still cares about despite everything. Eventually, Tola decides to break the news, hoping that Cooper will take responsibility. When she finally tells him, Cooper is overwhelmed. His heart races as he realizes the extent of the chaos he's created. Tola is fragile, emotionally charged, and looking for support. She pleads with him to help her, wanting to keep the pregnancy a secret for now. Cooper, feeling cornered, agrees but knows deep down that this situation is spiraling out of control. Tola leaves his office, hope glimmering in her eyes, while Cooper feels the weight of 3 lives hanging in the balance. In the days following Tola's revelation, Cooper attempts to juggle the emotional turmoil of the 3 relationships, trying to maintain his facade of the perfect teacher. He becomes increasingly paranoid, worried about rumors circulating among students and faculty. He starts avoiding the 3 girls, fearing that any interaction could raise suspicion. However, the weight of his secrets begins to affect his performance at work. His students notice his distracted demeanor, and his colleagues express concern over his lack of focus. The school principal calls him in for a meeting, sensing that something is amiss. Cooper manages to deflect the questions, but he knows that he's living on borrowed time. The storm is coming, and he can't hide. As the weeks go by, the pressure mounts, and Cooper's ability to keep his double life intact begins to crumble. The 3 girls are united by their shared predicament, and unbeknownst to Cooper, they begin to communicate more frequently, sharing their stories and feelings of betrayal. Each girl grapples with her emotions, wondering how they could all fall for the same man. One afternoon, after a particularly taxing day, Cooper finds himself cornered in the staff lounge by a group of teachers gossiping about his recent behavior. They speculate about his relationship with the students, and Cooper feels a knot tighten in his stomach. The more they talk, the more he realizes how closely his actions are being watched. The cracks in his facade deepen, and he understands that it's only a matter of time before the truth surfaces. The inevitable happens when Amoka, Simi, and Tola confront Cooper together. They meet him after school, and the atmosphere is heavy with tension. Each girl is armed with her own story, and as they lay their grievances out in front of him, Cooper feels his heart sink. They demand answers and accountability for their pregnancies, leaving Cooper with no way to deflect their accusations. Caught in a web of lies, Cooper tries to rationalize his actions, but his excuses fall flat. Each girl expresses her hurt and anger, and Cooper realizes he has severely underestimated the emotional impact of his actions. As the confrontation escalates, the reality of his situation hits him like a ton of bricks. They threaten to expose him if he doesn't help them, and Cooper, panicking, agrees to provide support, even as he knows it could cost him everything. Word starts to spread about Cooper's relationships with the girls. Whispers echo through the halls, and rumors fly among students and faculty alike. Cooper becomes the subject of scrutiny, and the school's administration launches an investigation into his conduct. He finds himself on the defensive, trying to explain his way out of the mounting accusations while the girls start to gather their own support. As he faces the administration, Cooper feels a sense of betrayal from the very students he cared about. The 3 girls had initially wanted to protect him, but now their anger drives them to reveal the truth. Cooper feels like a puppet with the strings cut, watching as everything he built begins to collapse. The weight of his choices begins to crush him, and he wonders if he'll ever regain control of his life. The fallout from the revelations is swift and brutal. The school suspends Cooper pending the investigation, effectively cutting him off from his livelihood. He is summoned to the principal's office for a meeting that feels like a trial. During the meeting, he faces harsh criticism from the administration, who are shocked by the breach of trust he exhibited as a teacher. Feeling the weight of shame and disappointment, Cooper struggles to defend himself. He attempts to justify his actions, but his words come across as hollow, even to himself. As he walks out of the meeting, the reality of his situation settles in. He has lost the one thing he valued most, his career as a teacher. With no clear path ahead, he feels a deep sense of regret and uncertainty about the future.